Literally everyone's reaction has missed the mark on this major opportunity that could literally benefit everyone involved. Plus, let's talk about the latest inflation numbers that just came in this morning. I've had some really interesting conversations this week, most of which centered around the reaction to new buyer-broker agreements and how that's going for everyone. I've seen a lot of different spins on this, everything from, oh, I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, to this is a complete nightmare, I don't know what to do, to, well, just wait till the next wave of lawsuits rolls in when people mess this up, or nothing's changing for me. And I don't think it's going to change for anyone else. What I haven't heard a whole lot of is, I'm going to use this to get my clients a better deal. Now, you might want to spit on your screen hearing me say that, and that's okay. You may not believe me that this lawsuit could in fact benefit someone other than the attorneys making millions off of it, not just in the courtroom, but in the consulting jobs they'll be hired for to interpret the lawsuit and draft the new agreements. You see, for the attorneys, this lawsuit is literally a gift that keeps giving. A jackpot, if you will. Just like Dodd-Frank was in 2010, the Consumer Protection Act that was supposed to lead to major reform in the mortgage industry. The consumer didn't actually benefit at all, but lobbyists sure did. They made a lot of money when all the banks had to hire them to interpret the new laws and make sure they were in compliance. That was a bit of a tangent, I'm sorry. But they're doing the same thing now. They're raking it in. I do believe this new era of business, though, it will benefit someone other than the attorneys. I think there are 3 specific ways that the new way we're going to handle realtor commissions will benefit homeowners and home buyers. So let me tell you about them. The first is transparency. I've heard some realtors say, well, the buyer always paid the commission, didn't you know? Which is a little tricky. It's true, but it's tricky. Yes, you paid $400,000 for that home. The realtor's commissions were deducted from the $400,000 sales price before the seller received their net profit. So yes, the buyer paid it. But at closing, you pay just 5% down plus your closing costs. Now, if you were responsible for paying your realtor's entire commission, this would have been handled a bit differently. At the beginning of your relationship with your realtor, they would have had you sign a buyer-broker agreement specifying how much commission they will be paid, whether that money comes from you or the seller. Let's say you agree on 2.5%. You will then shop for homes and come across some in which the seller is open to paying your buyer's agent's commission, depending on the terms of the offer. You may also encounter situations where there's absolutely no chance the seller is going to pay any commission to your realtor. So this amount will be due in full from you at closing. So now, $400,000 home, you pay your 5% down, you have your closing costs on top of that, and you also have to pay 2.5% of $400,000, which is $10,000, which is your realtor's commissions, directly out of pocket. Going forward, a realtor will need to thoroughly explain this and all the potential outcomes to the client up front, rather than just saying, don't worry about it, you don't pay me at all. I handle everything for you for free. That's very different, right? Buyer's agents will have to be much more articulate at explaining this and much more aware. The buyer will have to be much more aware of how the transaction works and exactly where every dollar of what they're spending at closing and what they're financing for the next 30 years, they'll know where every dollar is going and how it's being spent. I personally think that's good. I think clarity should be empowering. But as a buyer's agent, like I said, you'll have to be a lot more articulate. So there's increased value, and that's a benefit to the consumer as well. In order to get someone to sign a buyer-broker agreement, value will have to be demonstrated. The realtor will need to explain very clearly a very complex concept with several different potential outcomes. They will have to be confident enough to handle some of the objections that are going to come and navigate realistic solutions to those objections. Even more importantly, though, they will need a value proposition, a reason why the buyer should choose them and be willing to pay them out of pocket if it comes down to it. And this is where I've been really impressed with what I'm hearing. I've met with folks over the past week that have put together a very clear presentation of their value. They are ready to build on what they were doing before to now go above and beyond for a buyer, so there is zero hesitation when it comes to signing that buyer-broker agreement. For this reason, I think change is good, and this reform could be really positive for our industry and forcing us all to step it up. For the professionals, that's what we are, right? And we should constantly be reinventing ourselves and bettering ourselves and improving our value proposition. The third major benefit I think that's coming for homeowners and home buyers is more negotiating. Human beings don't like negotiating. It makes us uncomfortable to ask for what we want. We have a fear of conflict, and in today's day and age, we're actually addicted to instant gratification. Negotiation is literally the opposite of instant gratification. It takes time and requires effort and delays satisfaction. Studies have literally shown that people so prefer to maintain harmony that they will do so at the expense of their own interests. Well, guess what? Realtors are human beings too. Many times when one realtor, say a buyer's agent, calls another realtor who happens to be a listing agent, it turns out they're both human beings. Wild, I know. So instead of negotiating, neither of them wants to do that. So they just start chatting and figuring out how to put together a deal that both of their clients could stomach. Some of you might say that is in itself negotiating, but it is not. That is collaboration, a very key part of the ESCO process, but not at this exact juncture when the terms are being decided. Stay with me. Now that a buyer's agent has to negotiate their commission, there is no way around having to do this uncomfortable conversation and handle this uncomfortable task. So you know what'll happen? They will get better at it. And now the listing agent has to do this with each offer. They will also become a more experienced negotiator. Both realtors will be well versed on the different strategies they could use to get their client what they want. And both realtors will be accustomed to having to do this on every single deal. Do you know who benefits when better negotiating happens? The clients. Okay, PCE numbers. Kind of a snooze fest reaction from bonds this morning, but that makes sense based on what I told you last week will now be more important going forward than inflation. Personal consumption expenditures showed that yearly inflation was right in line with market expectations at 2.5%. Comparing July of 2024 with July of 2023, inflation climbed only very slightly, 0.2%, 0.2%, on both headline and core inflation. Core inflation just strips out fuel and food prices to give a more focused interpretation of what's happening with spending. So let's stroll down memory lane to measure our progress. Inflation peaked at 7% in 2022, and we're now at 2.5%, and the Fed's target is 2%. This helps us understand why they are going to cut rates in September. Now we're just left to wonder, will it be a 25 basis points cut or a 50 basis points cut? Next week is Property Pursuits, our monthly podcast, which we do in the form of a live webinar. This is a great way to spend 30 minutes if you're interested in real estate and the economy, whether you're in the market to buy right now, whether you're looking for a primary residence, a rental, or whether it's just a goal, or you just want to know if it should be a goal. We also have a very special guest, my friend Stephanie Funk, who is a partner at a local law firm. We're going to ask her about cohabitation agreements. We're going to ask her why you need a trust if you have a will, and then if you have a trust, why do you need a will? And her opinion on the NAR lawsuit. And I'm sure that's going to get spicy. So you can use the link below to register, and we'll see you there.